nunca volverá. Triste pena, ya déjalo ya.
San Antonio. Well, this is Fidel Castillo. I'm not there. I just wanted to make sure you guys got this address. It's here at 928 West Commerce Street. And, I want to tell you guys thank you as far as follow me on my show. And, this is a project that's being done here. And, of course, you can see the contractors are Bartlett, Koch, and Dakota Construction. What we're looking at here on the corner of Frio and of course Commerce Street is going to be what they're intending to do as far as the new mental health center being built next to the jail. And I've been working with you guys for quite a while and try to bring our identity or as far as our case study into understanding here. So let me just get this paperwork and let me get right here with you guys. I appreciate your time with this. But what it is, today I'm bringing you what this crisis has led up to since they chemically altered my son in the Texas Juvenile Justice Department with a drug called Prozac. And they don't want to accept the liabilities, and of course to advocate and try to bring change to San Antonio, or even throughout, on working with different groups and different partnerships on trying to bring what the governor brought to awareness even back in 2013, after starting my advocacy work and promising to God to fortify me with the armor to end this injustice against children, with restraints and isolation on what they had did to my son when he was defending the kids, that they can't help. They can alter their minds, but the people there aren't certified to deal with this, and they still aren't. We're having a process of, the mental health director, Center for Healthcare Services, all trying to constitute what in the 2012 Department of Veterans Affairs suicide report should have been saying, as far as, we had them come and testify at our San Antonio Coalition of Veterans and Families as to, her husband was put on different antidepressants after losing his serviceman to PTSD, but he was also put on an opiate. And, that discussion has been made sort of public today with, of course, last year, 2015, the United States handed out, I think it was 258 million, maybe 251 million opiate prescriptions. So somebody's profiting off this, and at least it's being brought into language now. And that's why I'm bringing this here to you today. This has been funded with a $55 million grant, or for some reason, they wanted to put a mental health center next to the jail. And with all the work that we did, of course, 2013, former Governor Perry, ended the use of restraints and isolation that I'd advocated for on Father's Day in 2009, when that director said I didn't have any rights. And, I'm here today to tell you we need to start defending not just our children, but our rights. And to let them continue with the process of creating violence by saying that you have a course here. I posted up what the mental health people are trying to do here in Bexar County by continuing using what they're saying is a CIT, crisis intervention training, sort of steering away from not accepting the clinical need of the uses of psychotropics. And, that advocacy work there in 2013 and the working with the restorative justice and doing the reviews on the 2012 suicide report of the Department of Veterans Affairs, psychotropics were there. But on September 3rd, former Governor Rick Perry signed HB 915, and it was done by a state representative, Los Colkhurst, who then was writing on the foster care system. And in that language there, it did say, and some of the children came to the legislation, testified that because they were being put on psychotropics, they wanted to kill themselves. And, I kept trying to advocate for the kids on what we tried to do with the Casey Foundation back in 2010, when they had come to give a PowerPoint here to the practitioners of Bexar County, and they didn't adopt. And in my assessment, the 7 single-parent moms, myself, and the 2 sets of parents, one set of parents' son ended up killing his father. And I went to Lisa Jarrett, she's a friend of mine, and she was the judge to decide to bound him over. And then working with Mary Jane Martinez, with the Texas Families of Incarcerated Youth, TIFA now being involved on what we're trying to make a change here and identifying what is our enemy here, and this is part of that enemy on the continuation of trying to make this part of government. I don't know if the governor signed that bill saying that the Texas foster care system's uses of psychotropics were causing the rate of suicide. We should acknowledge that. And I thought, well, if this has been in law, why are we not, having it acknowledged? And I tried to get that case study and language included in the last session there in legislation, the 84th. And it was Senator John Whitmire's bill. It was Senate Bill 1630. And it was over the report done by the Council of State Governments that showed that the recidivism rate in the United States was the highest in the United States here in Texas. Statewide, and without Bexar County being a part of it, I think it was 54%. And when we included, as far as our case study, or tried to, but didn't get it included, it would have showed San Antonio, the west side, actually where they're starting this mental health center next to the jail, would have the highest rate of recidivism in the United States. And that assessment was the bothersome part, of course, altering a child's mind as far as what we think is being a crime against humanity, as far as indigenous people, in the process that we're trying to partner with this state to end this injustice against, indigent children. We're going to call them indigenous children now. They didn't include the case study, and then, Jose Menendez, the senator here, said that we'll work on interning it. And I had worked on the ESP project, or Earth and Solar Poly Affordable Housing Model, to maybe the governor to form a task force and partner with the Native Americans to create a new process for indigent children in Texas and throughout the United States. It's a model for affordable housing. And, excuse me. It's so vital right now, and I'm not sure how this communique is going to get out to you as far as my mission continuing, as a service member myself. I'm going to continue on, and, Veterans for Education Reform went to Washington. This bill that Senator John Cornyn here, who actually got the Man of the Year in Texas, is trying to get passed. And on the review of this, it was SB 2002, and this was supposed to be heard on January the 28th there in Washington with the Senate Judiciary Committee. Anyways, in that bill, it was Mental Health and Safe Communities Act. And with reading what the Council of State Government and trying to get that language included that they didn't include in Texas, the recidivism was being caused, and they wouldn't say it was psychotropics, but it was being caused. Children are abusing their children, killing their parents. If you go back and Google, son kills father in San Antonio, that'll sort of give you the identity. And we've always asked, well, how many of them were, and actually reached back to Senator Whitmire's office on the riot in Giddings as to how many of the kids were on there, because they're going to process them into the adult system they're being charged for inciting a riot. And we asked them, how many of the kids, yeah. And now that they're doing this, as far as this new Center for Healthcare Services, trying to continue the use of psychotropics, but not saying that, this is why our veterans are killing themselves. They're trying to make it a model site with Sheriff Parmerlow in partnership, I guess, with the county on, if you fall in the judicial, maybe you need to be on your antidepressants. Or because, they've used psychotropics, and we in San Antonio are dealing with a lot of young Mexicans committing crimes. I think just last week there on my birthday, a young man killed his stepfather, and I tried to reach over there on the west side to see if the young man was in the juvenile, but I'm still going to push forward with this. And but I need your support here, and ask that you contact your senators, your state reps. We cannot let psychotropics continue creating the violence in San Antonio. They had it as a process, and when Senator Menendez earlier in the year had a call for action, Judge Laura Parker was there from the Texas Juvenile Justice Department, and she said that it wasn't the juvenile department that ordered the medicating of children. It was the University of Texas Health Science. And I said, well, Judge, you got to sign the order, but you're being identified as far as the studies are coming out here. Nobody's wanting to accept that this process is what's causing this violence. And that's why I'm here today. You're the citizens. We're the citizens. We're the people here. And we're the ones that are having the children that are being lost in this, as an indigenous person. I guess Texas penal system has become nothing more than slave ships on land. There's a stop work on, what they're not acknowledging as far as the clinical need of what they've done with these psychotropics. And they actually, when you try to get any doctor's help, they charge you $100, so you can't get any doctor's help. And that's why we as indigenous people are asking Governor Abbott to meet with us, because he had said, when he had sent that letter to Commissioner Castillo back in, I think it was September 25th, 2015, and he said this isn't going to happen under his watch, under any agency under the umbrella of the state care system. This is so important, and we have the opportunity to be heard. When I did the review on what even Sheriff Parmerlow's saying here, San Antonio could be a model to lead the nation. Well, if she takes and tries to get our case study and our language on everything that's been done here, yes, it can be. But we have to accept the matters of fact. The uses of psychotropics has created the violence that we're living with today. And there's a stop work in the prison systems today, and I had gone to speak at the Council of Justice, the board there, the Criminal Justice Board. And, you have in your system today something that you have to accept, and that's the liability of those men. And I'm not sure, we've asked everybody to help us on getting the case studies there that were a part of getting the funds. Even here, if you're going to get all this money, don't you think you need to be on point of matter? If Governor Perry said in the foster care system, why wouldn't we expand the psychotropic use in the juvenile system? And then with the ruling in the foster care system with, I think, December 17th, we had asked Lawrence Coleman with Senator John Whitmire's office, the legislative director, on addressing that and maybe helping the young men that are being charged with inciting the riot at Giddings. And, he stated that, how do you expect us to control them? And I said, well, what about what the judge's ruling is in the Texas foster care system? Judge Jacks ruled on December 17, 2015, that these uses were making members not functional members of our society. So that language is there, and they have it. And, of course, he said, well, how do you expect us to control them? And that's where it's sort of like, are you serious? Gotta do my show. And So now I thought, I can't keep going with this. I need to really start talking to you, the citizens, because this is where the change is going to be at when we realize that this process of enslavement is unjust. And when you're starting to create violence, that's not a good thing. And it's identified as creating violence, not just suicide, but, when they say recidivism, that means these kids are committing crimes. And, my son didn't remember taking somebody's food, and they gave him 12 years. Part of, I guess, the cover-up, but I'll take my case to the governor because I've been told that there's no judge in Texas is going to say that the Psychotropics made my son do this, but yet, even Adam Lance in Connecticut, I don't think everybody even knew that he was on a drug called fentanyl. And as far as why he blew his mother's head off and walked to the school. And you probably think about even our veterans doing God's will, I mean, they're responsible for the horrificness of this war. As far as, some of the case studies I was doing for the Department of Veterans Affairs suicide report, I'm trying to get lifelines for our veterans, and that's what the ESP project is for both of those entities, the kids that have been put on antidepressants that are recidifying in the adult system, and our veterans. And this being where this can't be what we're going to choose to do in our life and for our future. And if I can save one of my veterans or even save one child whose mind to be chemically altered with psychotropics, the Center for Healthcare Service, when I met with the director, Mr. Evans, Lonnie said that as to when we gave him the cause of suicide, the psychotropics and Lois Colkhurst's bill, wouldn't acknowledge it. As far as being the help maybe our veterans needed on not using psychotropics on these men. And we need to call Senator Cornyn and tell him to cease and desist on processing what is not needed. Crisis intervention training is not going to help. It has to be suicide prevention. The mind's been altered here, and we can't steer away from what could cause a mass suicide in the Texas prison system today if we don't see that this altering has caused the horrificness that is being shut down by the system. We have to wake up here as the citizens on not letting this be how they're destroying our children. My son's a Pop Warner Texas State champ, and I'll go to see the governor, but it's not just my son. It's a process in Texas that's been identified, and that's why we need you to reach out to them and tell them that we don't want any of our children or any of our veterans being put on psychotropics. Our veterans can help mentor and create something that's never been done before as far as our ESP project, Building America's Future. It's an earth and solar poly affordable housing curriculum that we invest in our future by creating the largest solar affordable housing project from San Antonio with our veterans to mentor these kids to be productive. Senator Whitmire's bill did say 1630 that the kids were indigent. Well, let's put them to work then. Let's not put them in prison and alter their minds and call it justice, because remember, they're calling this the Texas Juvenile Justice Department. And I thought, when I asked him, can we acknowledge what the judge ruled in MD versus Perry, that this wouldn't be something that would happen. And when I, got the language there in Washington, all of a sudden, this thing changes from safe communities. Mental health and safe communities got changed to breaking the cycle of mental health in the judicial system. Well, that seems easy enough. Stop the chemical altering of indigent children's minds. And that would stop the cycle. So I'm praying that, that we can start this here in Military City, USA. I'm a United States Navy veteran, Bicentennial Company 107. I just had my 40th anniversary. And the commitment to my service to our country. And, of course, we're hearing how we're going to rebuild America. And the being indigenous and a Native American of this land, we need to start now, and that's with our children. So I'm going to place a petition up online. You can go there. It's on YouTube, No Place for Any Children. And I'm going to continue on to my mission, but this is really important. He did say breaking the cycle and the judicial. And so breaking the cycle would just be simple enough by not continuing using psychotropics. And we know that all of them, as I had said before, Center for Healthcare Services, After the Battle, Save a Hero, Clarity, all these groups are continue using psychotropics. Even when I reached out to NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, they wanting to continue with the use of psychotropics. So let's not see the matters of fact. This is a fact. These are studies that I haven't done. These are studies that were brought to legislation. So if these studies have already been brought to legislation, and yet they're not being referenced to by our senators, they're not being, congressman, Cornyn, Man of the Year, trying to say that the CIT, Crisis Intervention Training, I spoke at the American Legion when I broke the code of silence on this body cameras, and I'm thinking when our veterans do lose their benefits and they change it to post-traumatic stress syndrome and get cut off for PTSD, they're going to need body cameras just for what they have to do when, these veterans aren't going to stand down. And so this is my prayer out to the governor of Texas, to the president of the United States, end the killing of our children and the suicide of our veterans by not using psychotropics. There's holistic ways. We have a hemp oil that deals with anxiety. We have our SP certification, the sweetgrass. We're ready to partner with the state of Texas or anybody. Native Americans deal with the highest rate of suicide because we've probably been the most oppressed people in America. They had 5.9 million Jews that were in the Holocaust, and they're honored throughout America. But when are we going to honor the genocide of the 100 million Native Americans? So, I'm a native of this land, and I'm going to pray with all y'all that we can make the change that needs to be made today together. And I'm going to push forward to try to get this out to the public. Even if I got to march to Washington, if I can't get Texas, I guess like they said back in the day, to hell with Texas, I'm going to Washington. I think somebody said maybe to hell with Washington, I'm going to Texas. Well, times have changed, and we need an awakening in America to protect America's future. And that's what I'm here for. I am a native of the land, but I'm a Native American Navy veteran. And I don't plan on standing down until this process of injustice, as what should be noted as a crime against humanity, is eradicated. And I'll ask Governor Greg Abbott to uphold his word as a man. And he said no child will ever endure this type of traumatization under the umbrella of Texas Care. So please, all you got to do is call, ask the city to discontinue the building of this center called Davila Construction, Bartlett Cock. They're all listed. Just Google them. Don't build a center where you're going to use psychotropics to create the violence. There's boards that actually fill prisons or find ways to fill prisons. And I think this is one of those ways that they're filling their prison system. The contract was with the University of Texas Health Sciences in Bexar County as far as what Judge Parker said. It was the University of Texas Health Science that gives the order to medicate. But the order has to be signed by the judge. So for there to be a new process, I think putting our veterans to work, building affordable housing with kids to shut down that school-to-prison pipeline, sort of peeving when we went up to talk to them on the report closer to home. They wouldn't meet with us because we wanted to find out how much of a diminishment they had on the school-to-prison pipeline. And I guess it's just not a question they wanted to answer. So I want to thank you, San Antonio, and I know you guys are hearing my prayers. I'll place a petition. I'd ask them to look back and what the judge ordered. She asked that the records be brought to this court for my son, and nobody would listen to him. And I think because the judge didn't like tattoos, my son has tattoos, and I thought you saw a picture of him as to why they did this, but then I'm finding out, no, they're actually covering up what they were doing to the children in the Texas Juvenile Justice Department. So please, No Place for Any Children is posted on YouTube. And then the ESP project, Building America's Future, ask your senator, your reps to meet with Native American leaders to bring a new prosperity for our nation. If we don't come together and acknowledge, it could be too late. So God bless you, and God bless America. God bless the indigent children of Texas. Thank you.
I can still remember the sound of the security gate clanging shut the first time I walked into a youth prison. I had just been asked to step in as Director of Juvenile Corrections, and I thought I should tour the state's facility. I have never forgotten what I saw that day. In fact, what I saw and heard that day in many ways leads me to talk to you about what some might consider a radical idea. I believe it is time to close every youth prison in America permanently, every single one of them, and replace them with things that work. Now, I want to tell you how I came to this belief, but I want to explain that I want to call these institutions exactly what they are. These are prisons for kids. They're often called youth development centers or youth rehabilitative centers or training schools or reformatories. Well, let's call them what they are. These are prisons for kids. Let me tell you a little bit about what I saw that day as I walked through the facility. I saw bright lights everywhere that I went. I saw 100 young people in a facility that had been built for 40. I saw young people wearing sweats with holes in them. I saw young people in handcuffs and shackles. I saw rows of isolation cells, and in each of those cells, I saw a young face staring out because that young person had been held in solitary confinement, sometimes for weeks. The walls of this place virtually dripped with a pervasive sense of dread and anxiety and tension and anger. And everywhere I walked in this facility, there was a sense of imminent violence. Well, I had a terrible night that night. I found myself thinking again and again, what would happen if one of my own children were being held in that place? And I thought, we've got to fix this place. We've got to make it better. And I ask everyone listening today, please go to your state leaders and say, we want to close these facilities down.
Yo sé que un día volverá. Triste pena, ya déjalo ya. Yo sé que un día volverá.